Let's get you the latest now on this big story. Bring in Voice of America's Henry Ridgwell, who joins us now live from London. Henry, great to see you. Thanks once again for chatting to us. So there's understandably been an outpouring of emotion over the past couple of hours as shock makes way for grief. How would you describe the past 12 hours?
It's been an extraordinary 12 hours in Britain. Many people, I think, have got very little sleep. Hundreds, if not thousands of people have made their way to various royal residences in the country to lay flowers, to express their condolences, to hug each other, simply to be there effectively in a moment of history for Britain and the world. Really, life here in Britain is suspended as we know it. The death of the Queen yesterday has triggered officially several days of mourning leading up to her funeral, and we await further details of when that will be. But this, the first full day after the death of the Queen yesterday afternoon, and people will be processing that grief, processing their mourning in very individual ways. Many people, I think, will not perhaps make it into work today. They will be seeing friends, loved ones, discussing their memories and trying to process what's happened.
Yeah. And, you know, part of the questions that arise, at least from South Africa, is the kind of hold that the Queen still had over British society. I mean, where would you reckon that is in a context where it appears a whole lot more people have become more critical of the institution itself and its standings in society?
Exactly right. It seems like a paradox, doesn't it, that many people, I think the latest polls suggest that about 60% of the British population approve of the monarchy itself. And yet the figurehead at the top of that, until yesterday, the Queen, Queen Elizabeth II, was held in such high regard by everyone in the country. And clearly, as you've seen from the tributes that have poured in from around the world, that extends globally as well. I think it just speaks to the character of the lady herself and her ability to rise above the chaos, the tumult, the noise of everyday life here in Britain and around the world. Of course, the recent years have been among the most tumultuous and chaotic in Britain, and yet she has stayed steadfast throughout. She has appointed 15 prime ministers. She's stayed absolutely neutral throughout. She is a lady to whom British people have turned in times of crisis. One thinks back to the terror attacks, for example, in 2005, or the coronavirus pandemic. People looked to Queen Elizabeth II for wisdom, for advice and for comfort, and she answered their calls. She appeared on television to give words of comfort, and once people saw that, I think they knew they could get through it. So I think Liz Truss's tribute to say that she was the bedrock on which modern Britain was built was correct in that sense, that she was there while everything else was going on in the background, and for that she was well loved. But It wasn't just as this sort of remote figurehead. It was as a, you know, almost a grandmother figure for the country, effectively. Yeah,
many people saying she's this constant in an ever-changing society. You've touched on her neutrality, as it were, as she kind of oversaw the different administrations through the years. Already the, let's call it criticism against King Charles III, who obviously takes over from his mother, is he hasn't been able to really rise above these politically charged discussions at all times. What do you reckon that means for the time he'll have on the throne?
I think it will be much more difficult. He has been the longest waiting heir to the throne in British history, and he's the oldest monarch to take up the position of king in British history. And as you say, he has purposefully, as a decision by himself, not stayed politically neutral on some matters, particularly to do with the environment, for example, where he has been a very prominent campaigner against climate change and for nature conservation and so on. There will be pressure on him, I think, to give up some of those positions, or perhaps stay rather more above the day-to-day political fray on those matters. And I think for the time being, of course, the procedures and protocol for becoming king will take over. But looking further forward for the monarchy, it is a very difficult time, I think. This is another period of transition for them. The Queen saw the royal family through difficult times, just over the last decades, looking back to the divorce of Charles and Diana, of course, and everything that's happened since then, the death of Diana, the divorce of her other children, and so on, Harry and Meghan's anonymity towards the royal family and their move to the United States, Prince Andrew's investigation into links to Jeffrey Epstein, for example. She oversaw and steered the monarchy through choppy waters. Will Prince Charles be able to do that with the backing of the British people? That's far from clear. And Prince Charles is taking over at a very difficult time for Britain as it tries to find its way in the world. It's 6 years since the Brexit vote, for example, but still the country is divided down those political and identity lines. There are big economic problems in the country and a sense of unfairness as the rich get richer and inequality increases. Can Prince Charles be that kind of figurehead who draws the country together through difficult times? We'll have to wait and see whether he can perform that role in the coming months. But I think it will be much more difficult than perhaps people imagine at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. No matter how you see her legacy, the passing of Queen Elizabeth II is certainly the end of an era. Henry Ridgwell, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. Really do appreciate it. Henry is with Voice of America, live to us there from London.